Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, pause this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. In the context of this podcast, everybody refers to us and our cat. You are free to feel however you want about Rand, who is a fictional character. Don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
I mean, I've had a song from the Beetlejuice soundtrack stuck in my head for like a week, and I don't never even listened to the Beetlejuice soundtrack fully. Just this one song.
What song is it?
It's called No Reason. It's nice. I'd sing it for you, but I'm not in the Glee Club, so...
Barf.
Every day I thank God that Glee isn't still on.
Oh my god, literally, will the children ever know how
Heinous it was.
heinous it is when you have to sit there and listen to Mr. Schuster sing to his room full of socially awkward teens? He was such a cringy character.
Like, I'm so glad Glee ended before Hamilton came out, before The Greatest Showman came out. I mean, The Greatest Showman was basically the movie version of Glee already, from what I can tell, based on who liked it. Thankful that that ended before Cardi B's rise to stardom. Just variety of musical things happening.
Yeah.
That I'm glad that Glee couldn't touch with its grimy pubescent fingers. I thought you were about to do the live long and prosper thing.
Should I tape my fingers like that?
I have to tape my fingers like this.
I know,
to
it's so weird to me that you've got that very springy finger.
We'll have to do it on a live stream sometime. Just display the weird parts of my body. My fingers and my hips. Those are them.
Emily's hips do not bend.
Emily's hips lack a certain flexibility that most human hips have.
Okay, you can show off your hips and I can crack my neck 77 times.
It is incredible how you do that. And it's so loud every time.
That was only one.
Yeah, I don't know if the mic can pick that
I
up.
think I just have bad bones.
Bad bones.
Please don't sing Taylor Swift on
What's
our
the...
podcast.
I just forgotten what the
Bad
real...
Blood.
Oh, Bad Blood. It's like, what was it originally? Oh, God. You're right, we can't sing Taylor Swift on the podcast because not only are we not in the Glee Club, but she would sue us to death.
Delete it!
Ah! I'll bleep it out.
Okay, you'll never know what we were saying.
Oh, Taylor. You abhorrent white feminist.
No, literally everyone keeps trying to tell me that her new album is like new queer canon, and I'm like,
Shut up.
listen to an actual lesbian, Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
They exist, believe it or not.
Okay, anyway. This is Everybody Hates Rand. We're a friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I can't cut myself off in the middle of the intro like I'm doing currently because I will forget.
Why don't you start over?
No. I refuse. I'm Emily.
Yeah, that's Emily Jusha. I am Sally Goodger. We are at our table. We're recording a little bit later than usual. Is that why we're thrown off?
Maybe that's why, I don't know.
Sorry, I had to go dog sit.
As referenced in last week's closing statements. What is it? It's a sign-off. Jesus Christ.
Closing statements, my closing
My
arguments.
closing arguments to the
I feel
court.
like, are the sign-offs even fun anymore? Should we just stick with be slutty and don't do a war crime?
I'd feel really weird if we just transitioned from fully talking about Wheel of Time to be slutty, don't do war crimes, end of episode in the space of like 30 seconds, because otherwise that's what we'd be doing. I don't know, though. I guess other podcasts do it.
Yeah, just if they're not entertaining, weigh in, people on the internet.
I'm so sick of myself right now.
I could try summarizing the battle.
The
that would go
battle.
horribly. I have no idea what anything is.
Well, I mean...
Except for the lightning.
The lightning.
They are the titular fires of heaven, in case anyone was wondering.
I mean, it's a classic Robert Jordan large-scale battle sequence in that unless you, like Robert Jordan, have actively been in the Vietnam War, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you, just logistically.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a way, I find that there's a certain verisimilitude to that. I think being in an actual battle would be deeply chaotic.
Yeah.
Especially for our 2 points of view characters. Rand, who initially is watching the battle, but is very confused is sort of, like, focused on other things. Mm-hmm. And then eventually he sort of goes down this path of, I don't know what happens to him. He has a mental breakdown, essentially.
Yeah, because he's using too much magic battery acid.
A physical / mental breakdown, which as we teach second graders in my publication that I work for, all of your various aspects are connected. So if your physical well-being is suffering, so is your mental and emotional well-being. So it's sad that Rand never went to second grade, is what I'm saying.
Kindergarten dropout, baby.
Ooh. I mean, if we're going with Matt is illiterate TM, then I would find it pretty easy to believe that Rand and Perrin are also second grade dropouts. Mm-hmm. Those boys never learned how to write cursive. Are you kidding me?
Do they even teach kids cursive anymore?
I don't think so. I think did you learn cursive?
Mm-hmm.
I think, cursive. Yeah, the years between us was like the drop-off point.
That's so weird.
I know.
Like, I don't use cursive a ton, but I'm glad that I know it.
I don't use cursive.
That's how I do my signature and stuff. It's in cursive.
Oh, yeah, I know how to write my signature. Well, I don't know. I just sort of do a big E and then a squiggle.
Yeah, Emily's got the doctor mentality.
I'm just...
Have you ever seen my dad's signature? It is so funny.
I think you've told me it's just like a line.
Yeah, but it's also so small. It's like minuscule. He'll do like a dash. A little W, like the smallest W you've ever seen, and then a line, and then the smallest G possible for man to make, and a line. And I'll be like, did an ant do this?
It's a signature for ants.
Okay, anyway.
Well, I feel like my signature, I intend to put the letters in there. So there's like the spirit of the letters, if not the...
Spirit stallion of the Cimarron.
Remember how that's Matt Damon?
Yeah.
I think about that all the time.
Because my friend Julie, every time we say that fact, it's like the first time she's heard it.
Every time?
It's always the same conversation. We'll talk about the song from Chicken Little and the fact that that's the Bare Naked Ladies, and then someone will bring up the fact that that's Zach Braff in Chicken Little, and then someone will have to bring up, well, it's Matt Damon and Stallion of the Cimarron, and each of these 3 subsequent facts blow Julie's mind, and this has happened like no fewer than 5 or 6 times.
I like that she immediately puts a mental block on them because they're too traumatic
it's very funny
to process. Oh, that is good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was saying something about how the battle is confusing to Rand. It's also confusing to Matt because, of course, he's not in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah.
He has a very comparatively small group of men, and he is just trying, he has a goal, which once he's got them, he's trying to get them out of the battle, mm-hmm. and the battle is just moving with him. Mm-hmm. So he's sort of always in the middle of it. In terms of warfare, this is also not your typical pitched battle in that it's mostly between the Ale, who we haven't really seen fight each other much, and also generally we're not seeing the Ale fighting each other here. Still, we're seeing Rand with Edwin and Avienda engage in magical warfare, while Matt is on the ground with our more typical fantasy setup of infantry and cavalry while fighting Ale. And also, neither of them is really in any actual battle scenarios. They usually cut off before any actual violence begins, if that makes sense. I don't know really what is the point of that, but that whole formula is pretty typical of Robert Jordan.
Yeah.
Especially as you get into, I don't know. There's a really extended battle sequence between Rand's forces and the Shanshin in book 8, I think, that you're about to get into.
No.
Not really extended. It's like a chapter or 2.
I don't want to read about that.
Sadly, it's there.
Okay. Fine, I guess.
And when we see Matt engaging in guerrilla warfare, also with the Shanshin in the later books, it usually cuts off before we get too deep into it. Or, because we're with Matt, we're far back from the center of the violence. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there are, like, other instances where Robert Jordan obviously doesn't, like, shy away from violence. Like, book 2 is very graphic on, like, an interpersonal level. And, but I also think it, like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but, like, I enjoy it personally a lot more to get it from the, like, tactical level, which is kind of what happens when you're bouncing from, like, Matt's point of view to Rand's point of view and, like, getting different pieces of the battle. And I think that for Robert Jordan as a military veteran, it is probably, like all warfare is bad. But, like, the parts of warfare that are interesting are the, like, tactics. It's probably not as interesting or as enjoyable to write about men on the ground dying as it is to write about the tactics and, like, what's happening on a macro level.
Yeah, the, like, brutal reality in warfare, and if you're a military veteran, then there's really no way to get around this.
Yeah.
Is that if you're actually in the middle of the battle, it is, you can describe it in, like, 3 words. It's hot, it's bloody, it stinks, and it's probably on some level kind of boring.
Yeah.
You know, your adrenaline is so high and it plateaus so high that it just sort of fades out, numbs out.
Yeah.
I think it's also sort of a character thing. I'm thinking that we do get sort of into the battle when we're with Perrin. But Perrin engages a lot more with, like, themes of violence and personal, like, violence and how he engages in violence and, you know, his whole berserker thing. Whereas, like you said, Matt just really has a tactical mind, and Rand's form of battle is almost always magic.
Well, yeah, especially in this instance, Rand is literally elevated above the battlefield and able to, like, see all of the pieces playing out in front of him. And Matt has the opposite effect where he can only see, like, a very small part of the battle. So, yeah, just this particular battle I find to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think it's well written in that we might not technically have a clear understanding of what's going on, but we don't need a clear understanding of what's going on. Over-explaining warfare is, like, a huge mistake that a lot of authors make in fantasy because it's incredibly boring.
Yeah, I don't really need to know. Matt's like, excuse me, how many can your soldiers do this battle configuration or whatever? And Tommy says yes, and I'm like, great, competent war boys.
Yeah, like, to just have... to just lay out the entire battle, first of all, would take pages upon pages upon pages, and this is, you know, the pitfall that the last battle chapter in A Memory of Light falls into. But also, it's like, it's not furthering character development, and it's not furthering the plot, which is technically what you always have to be doing as a writer.
And also, Matt, in the last chapter, pretty much laid out all of the... what's, like, happening play by play in the battle when he's like, this is what I would do and this is how it would function. So it's like, we already got that in an interesting way because it does further character development and plot.
Yeah,
so, like,
we got the macro stuff.
So we don't need it. We don't need them to be like, and then Ruark and his men moved here and did this formation and so many men
who
died.
Gives a fuck?
Everyone was shitting themselves.
One time my family...
Can't wait to see what this goes.
My family several times in my childhood went on, like, these East Coast trips. And one was, like, we landed in Washington, D.C., I think, and we just, like, did a circuit of, like, stuff around Virginia. And then we left from Pennsylvania.
Classic.
Or something like that. Because my mom's from Philadelphia, so I remember we stopped in Philadelphia. But we went to Gettysburg, and for some reason, my parents were like, here's what we'll do. We'll hire a tour guide. And what they do is you hire some guy, and he literally gets in your car and, like, directs you around the battlefield and monologues at you about, like, what went down at which parts of the battle. I can't even remember how old I was, but it was so terrible.
That just feels...
I thought Adam was going to commit ritual suicide because he was, like, 7 at that point, I think.
So he's like, this is the worst day of my short life.
We were all so miserable.
Was
and,
Chris just like,
oh yeah, I'm sure
wrapped?
Chris was intensely interested. So he was just like this awkward old man. And we were all just like, what is happening?
It's so much worse that he's an old man. For some reason, I was thinking, like, some college student,
Yeah,
you know?
you'd hope. No, he was, like, in his 60s.
But, of course, like, who else is obsessed with the Civil War but old white dudes?
He just was like, and here's where this happened. The only thing that I actually remember from that tour is that we passed by, like, a herd of cows, and he was like, those are the Beefalos. And we were like, the what? And he was like, it's like a buffalo cow mix.
Cool.
Beefalo.
They sound
And we were
rad.
like, what?
Get out, I want to see the Beefalos. What else of interest happens in this chapter? Matt is trying to run away, but lo and behold, he's caught by the spider web of
Fate.
pitch warfare.
I mean, we are following the two boys, and it alternates between them, and we essentially get from sunrise to a couple hours after sundown, so the whole day. Rand gets 3 points of view, Matt gets 2. Rand's starts with him waking up, talking to Lan, who's like,
Don't go fight Couladin.
yeah, Lan's like, why are you carrying a sword? And Rand essentially is like, in case I run into Couladin, and because I don't want to defeat him with my magic powers that I have. And Lan's like, okay, but have you considered this? Couladin has, like, 20 years of training on you, or whatever, 15. The Ale are very good at their jobs. Just because you accidentally killed someone one time with your master sword doesn't mean you're ready to take him on.
Yeah.
And also, it is so fucking stupid as the Jesus of this fantasy world to put yourself in harm's way like that.
Yeah. And even Lan is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, Lan's like, you've got to be kidding me, you know?
Yeah, this is one conversation where I'm like, Lan, a good mentor figure.
Yeah, Lan's like, what?
Why would you do that? Like, you need to stay as far away from him as possible.
And Rand's just like, oh, well, I don't know. What'll happen will happen. This is when we also find out that Rand's whole plan for the day was to just sort of wander around.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
He's a dumb fuck.
Like, he walks out and all the maidens are around the tent, and they're like, we're here to escort you to the tower with Edwin and Avienda. And my initial thought reading this was just like, yeah, because that's obviously where he should be, using his intense magical powers to fight with Edwin, who he asked to do the exact same thing. And he's like, oh, like it's never occurred to him.
That he wouldn't just literally be wandering around on foot, being like, you good?
Yeah, Rurik's like, you're actually making this whole thing worse. Because you're on a horse.
Yeah.
Makes you a pretty fucking easy target.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
We literally see later the Ale just, like, hamstringing all of the horses and men falling and dying horribly.
And Matt's just like, ugh.
Matt's like, okay.
This is awful.
It's like, this is a mistake.
This whole thing was a mistake.
So Rand is literally the dumbest baby.
Yeah, he's so fucking stupid. And the maidens are like, no, you're going to the fucking watchtower whether you want to or not. And he's like, meh.
Yeah. He's got to be a piss baby about it.
Man tantrum.
Yeah.
Mantrum.
Mantrum with Lantrum.
And, I mean, obviously this is like a version where you're seeing the subplot with the maidens start to crescendo, in which we also find out that Rand had consigned them to guarding the tower with Edwin and Avienda. And they were like, you assigned us to be your bodyguards, and you're telling us to not guard your body for the day?
So
So
this
that's
very dangerous day.
on this day when we're literally in the middle of the battle.
Sidebar, the fact, like, the first of these chapters is called, like, This Place and This Day. And they literally, like, Robert Jordan, like, shoves
just
that in the
sprinkles that
text
phrase
as
in.
much as he can.
He's just
And
like,
I'm
ooh, love it.
I'm like, what are you referencing? Some, like, dumb Homer shit? What is happening?
No, it was just, it was like he liked the phrase
Yeah.
and was like, ooh.
I'm just I will pepper in the fact that I am gay.
I will pepper in the fact that I have been in the military.
Anyway. Yeah, so then they're like, you are coming with us.
It makes me wish that we got a point of view from one of the maidens.
Yeah.
Like Sulin would be ideal because Sulin is such a badass.
I know, Sulan's such a fun character.
I know, she's great. not because we can't empathize or understand what the maidens are going through, but because we are so often fed this excuse that Rand is culturally unaware. And so it would be nice to have someone who is culturally in the know just blatantly be like, this is humiliating. Mm-hmm. Because Rand is not sending us out the way he would send out. He's not utilizing us the way the men are being used. And it's like, this isn't just affecting the maidens. Everyone around them sees this. Mm-hmm. That they're being, like, coddled and infantilized. That would be so humiliating.
Yeah.
Just, like, makes me really angry.
Yeah. Coddled and infantilized is such a good way of putting it.
And he's like, maybe they won't catch on to the fact. And Sulan's like, no one's stupid except you.
You're the only dumbass here.
You're the only dumbass on this battlefield. You were going to go just ride around.
It's so stupid. What is he thinking?
Like, he's just like, fate will bring Couladin to me. And Matt on the other end of the battlefield is like, you wish!
It's like, fate brought Couladin to me. Meanwhile, on the other end, someone's like, please don't go chase after Couladin. And Matt's like, do what now?
Matt's like, ew, why would I?
They're like, you're young and hot-blooded. And Matt's like, no, I'm smart, and I'm going to stay away from the fighting.
I'm smart. We're going to stay away from the fighting. Don't get me wrong, I am very pissed at Couladin for starting this whole ass thing.
Yeah.
But that does not mean I'm going to seek him out and kill him.
Don't get me wrong, I will kill him, but it'll be by accident.
Next chapter, Matt's like, oh.
It's like, sorry, what's your fuck?
Like, if I were filming this, you know, it would be like, we'd get all the Rand stuff, and then we'd cut over to Matt, where someone is like, our scouts report Couladin's with this next group, or whatever. And Matt's like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to engage with him. And they're like, don't kill Couladin. And he's like, no, I won't. I'm not going to kill Couladin. And then smash cut to the next day. Matt just sitting with his head in his hands.
Next to Couladin's dead body.
Surrounded by partying soldiers.
Oh, Matt is so funny in these chapters.
I know, he's so good. Anyway, Rand, Edwin, and Avienda go up to the top of this tower and just start channeling massive amounts of power, doing lightning bolts and earthquakes and shit.
Yeah, just doing, little chemical warfare, basically.
Yeah, it's a little...
It's, like, not a good look.
Yeah, it's like... it's morally so troubling.
Yeah.
Because, like...
It's just, like... I mean, I get it. They're using... Rand literally has this whole monologue where he's like, I have to think of everything in the terms of how useful it is to me. And, of course, having these 3 nuclear bombs or whatever is useful. But, like, the way Rand describes just, like, blowing off the mount, like, the hilltops.
Oh, yeah.
And just, like, killing hundreds of people at one time. It's, like... I don't know. It's just, like, how much is really at stake that Rand needs to be killing hundreds of thousands of people and needs to be asking Edwin and Avienda to kill hundreds of thousands of people for him.
I know, it's just like a terrifying escalation of war. It's like time traveling a bunch of like soldiers from the American Revolution to now and having them get nuked.
Be like, listen, here's a drone.
They're just like, no, you can't match it,
Yeah.
And obviously, eventually, Samael, we're led to believe, starts, like, throwing shit back, but it's like, that has more to do with personal petty problems.
Yeah, it's not like Samael's trying to, like, protect Couladin and the Shadow.
Yeah, he doesn't
or, like,
shit.
give them even ground, And it's just, like, I don't know, it's one of those things that's supposed to feel, like, natural to this world. Like, of course, like, these magic users are... This is, like, a natural escalation of, we can see how far they've come in their training. This is, like, the natural arena for them to have, like, a big theatrical show of how powerful they are. But it's, like, really unsettling. Mm-hmm. And, like, I feel like it's not... Like, I'm honestly surprised that Edwin agrees to it.
It's, like, we get so much later in the series when Matt introduces cannons to warfare where everyone is like watching them and seeing their destructive power and being like, this is terrifying and horrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like we never quite get that moral retrospective on what it means to engage in warfare with your magical powers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's interesting because as the series goes on, we see really creative ways to utilize magic in terms of warfare that aren't inherently violent, like traveling to reduce supply lines, healing, of course, is a huge thing. There's a lot of shit that you can be doing. But, like, instead we're just, you know, gonna pepper in balefire and people throwing bombs at each other. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Fantasy series.
Yeah, like, but it's just like, I don't know. I just, like, I was thinking when I was reading Path of Daggers this week, I read a couple of chapters where Elaine is engaged in the constant, you know, Aes Sedai. I have more power, like, I have the ability to channel more power than you, and therefore I am, like, inherently in charge. And it just, like, felt very yucky in the context of, like, all the police violence that is happening. Like, the person who possesses the most firepower shouldn't necessarily be in charge and able to, like, exert their will over people. I don't know. It's not a very coherent thought, but I've just been thinking a lot about irresponsible uses of the one power.
I mean, yeah, it's just, like, our world and we as readers have grown beyond this very straightforward warfare, but make it fantasy by sprinkling in some magic. You know, that's not really interesting because we live in the 21st century where we have enough news coverage and enough people around the globe on Twitter and Instagram showing us, like, how destructive these really terrifying weapons are in battle. I don't know.
It just seems odd that there's not, like, a single person who's like, I am opposed to you throwing lightning bolts at people.
Yeah.
Everyone is just like, yep, gotta go out here, win the battle, kill the Shadow, invade fantasy France. It's just like a checklist. What are you gonna do this Tuesday?
Invade fantasy France. It's in my planner. Oh, do you want to talk about your planner deal?
We can do that at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
That was kind of going to be my sign-off.
Oh, good.
Although I did have another very funny moment happen to me as I was walking into the apartment. So maybe I'll do too.
But sticking with Rand, Samuel eventually punches back around noontime when they're now exhausted from, I guess, exerting themselves to the fullest in the morning, which isn't, like, a great use of resources, but...
Again,
to each their own. Samuel blows up the tower, so R.I.P. Kendovir's, telescopes. At least Matt has one.
I know.
Apparently from gambling.
Yeah, he has, like, a little baby one.
Matt was like, I will get a telescope, excuse me.
Matt would want a telescope.
I know, he would love that. He's like, I'm just gonna add this to my little pouch of
my
shiny
Ravens
things.
Cash.
Ugh.
Weird
He's
boy.
So funny. Excuse me. But the tower falls, and then Egg and Avienda are like, okay, well, we're
cooked, man.
We are cooked. And Rand's like, we gotta get back out there. He's, like, been unconscious recently, which means that he has a concussion.
Yeah.
So already, not doing great.
Immediate medical care.
He also knows that the wound in his side has opened again, and so he is bleeding. And it's just, like, stupid after stupid. He's like, I'm just gonna hop on my horse and, get out there. Yeah. Again, not really with any purpose or destination in mind. So, whatever. But Egg and Avienda are like, yeah, fine, we'll come along. Probably because they're like, Fantasy Jesus is going to die today.
Fantasy Jesus is determined to die today.
Fantasy Jesus has a death wish. And Rand's like, I do.
Like, you're boring.
Now that I've had sex, I have nothing left to live for.
Oh my god, while he's unconscious, Avienda is, like, kneeling next to what she assumes is his dead body and is like, you can't die because me and Elaine love you.
And it's like, oh.
It's so cringeworthy.
I know. I'm like, dear Christ. The male fantasy really pops out in this. Do you know what I'd be doing if someone was unconscious next to me?
CPR.
CPR, baby. No more love laments. I would break into song. That's what I would do.
You start beating your chest like an ancient Greek woman. Wailing. Stupid.
Christ. Anyway. Matt, meanwhile, is trying to get away, has had his coat sliced by an arrow.
I know.
No mention, by the way, of how that little subplot played out. He's like, I almost got killed by an arrow. And I'm like, so then did you kill the person who shot the arrow? Or did you just run very fast away?
It's very funny. He's like, I would have admired the shot if it wasn't aimed at me.
It wasn't aimed at me.
Matt has some very good
The
one-liners
crucial, yeah.
in this chapter.
And he, from his position on his vantage point on a hilltop, sees the Terran/Kyrianan forces walking along the road and some ale, Shadow, lying in wait. And Matt is like, I really do not want to get involved with this. Like, super do not want to get involved with this. But I am moving before I can do anything about it. He's got one of those classic Matt lines where his body moves before Matt's brain can catch up to it. That's what happens when you're a creature of raw instinct, baby. We love our king.
He's also just won't let 3,000 people die needlessly.
Yeah, like, morally, it just takes him a minute to catch up to.
Yeah, and he's like, ew, morals.
He's like, oh, I hate it.
Yeah, gross.
Ew. Gotta wash my hands after this. But he approaches the column, gets them to stop, and has 3 separate interactions with the 3 factions that we described last time. The Terran nobles are the most insufferable. They're just like, what? Yay, we get to fight the ale? You want us to use strategy so most of us don't die?
Gross.
Gross. We're just gonna kill all the ale. And Matt's like, all right, great.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that.
Let me know how it goes.
We also find out that these guys have disobeyed orders, too. That they are not where they're supposed to be, essentially.
And it's like,
looking for a fight. And Matt's like, gross. He then has a conversation with Darred, who is leading the pikemen, the infantry. Just a common Kyrianan guy. Very sensible, very straightforward. We love Darred. He then has the infamous interaction with Talmanes, who I guess is leading the Kyrianan cavalry.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because he and they both take.
Yeah, and they go, boop.
Yep. Okay. You guys should see the hand motions we are doing.
This is how warfare works.
It's a lot of gesticulating.
I mean, yeah, Matt does also do military commands that he doesn't remember learning.
He's like, Matt approaches Talmanes, lays out his entire plan, and it's hilarious because Talmanes says absolutely nothing until the end when he's like, all right, I'll lead half of you lead half. And Matt's like, okay.
Now we're married.
And that's when they fell in love. Deep Raider.
It is very funny, though, because Matt's like, no, what? In his head.
No.
Like, fuck, no, I don't do fighting.
Fuck, I hate it.
But then out loud, he's like, I'll meet you there.
Matt also notes that most of these men are incredibly young, which I always forget because Talmanes has such huge 60-year-old woman energy.
Yeah. But Talmanes is like 3 years older than Matt.
Talmanes, that means, is like 24.
Yeah.
And a full head shorter than Matt.
Yeah.
And just...
Oh, I love him.
I know. He's one of the great characters. Again, slightly ruined by Brandon Sanderson in the late books.
I do not like to think of Talmanes' haircut, though, where the, like,
I know,
front
just,
of his head
you
is
can't
shaved.
think about it or it will ruin all.
I just like to think of Talmanes being, like, so beautiful and small.
We can have hope for the television series.
Rafe, if you're listening, do not give him a half-shaved head.
Rafe,
unless it's an undercut.
Ooh.
That would be a fun twist on the Kyrian. And
like,
if they all had, like,
head?
yeah. Because I know the Shanshin have, like, half of it shaved. But if all the
They just
French
had, like-
people just had undercuts, yeah.
And Matt's like, cool.
That's, like, hot.
That's like, oh my god. The sex appeal.
Of this very small man.
Right. But anyway, Matt leads this first charge successfully.
Yeah.
More or less.
They make something called a hedgehog, which I didn't fully understand the first time I read it, because I'm like, what is Matt doing? But I feel like I have a better grasp on it this time.
Just a bunch of dudes with their pikes facing out. Hedgy, like.
Like a hog.
Like a hedgehog. And
Which, I mean, now we have to assume that hedgehogs exist in the Wheel of Time universe. So.
I mean, badgers do, so.
Yeah. Badgers, hedgehogs, hummingbirds.
Hey. Woodland creatures.
These are the things that have been named. Also, like, dogs and shit.
Also,
and
like,
cats.
dogs and shit. We then skip to Matt a little later in the day when it's now raining because the girls manipulated the weather and lost
Sounds
control of it.
miserable.
I know.
Like, if you have to fight, why in the rain?
In the rain.
Like, gross.
Like, Matt has to keep wiping off his telescope, which just, like, encapsulated so neatly for me how miserable the whole experience is as someone who used to walk dogs in the rain.
Oh, it was so sad.
The, like, frequency that you would just have to, like, wipe off your face in order to see.
And the poor doggos.
Yeah, the poor dogs are like, I don't want to be here either.
Yeah, Matt's poor horse has gotten used to the sound of booming thunder.
Yeah, poor Pips, traumatized beyond belief.
Yeah,
and
Pips is
let's
the
pour
real-
one out for Pips for surviving this entire series, as far as I'm aware.
Good for you, Pips. I love Pips. What
Yeah.
a good horse.
But Matt tells us that they've now engaged in, like, several more battles, and he's like, the Terrans think that we're doing better than we are, but in Matt's head, it's like a draw and then, like, narrow wins, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, it's not going great, and really, I just want to, like, leave here.
Mm-hmm. I want to try and get these fellas out of here.
But obviously, the other side of this coin is that they all would have been totally massacred if Matt had not stepped in.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's continuing to have relationships with various officers. Nalisan.
I have no idea how to say it. Nalisian? Like Taliesin? Nalison?
Nalishan. Nalishan is what we're going to go with.
Nalishan.
Nalishan is, Matt tells us, the second to take command after the original guy died.
Yeah.
So there was another guy in between him. Which, Christ, you know. So Nalishan, Darad, and Telmanes.
These are our babies.
Yeah, all of whom will be more prevalent throughout the series, although sadly Nalishan bites it in book 7.
Oh no, it's really sad.
It is really brutal.
Yeah.
I can't remember what happens with Darad. He might die too.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just remember Nalishan's death being, like, really sad. I was like, why am I so sad to lose this boy?
It's very gruesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great how much camaraderie is established in these very few chapters.
It's also so funny because Talmanes goes from not speaking to Matt to being like, I would follow this idiot anywhere.
Darrad's like, I have never heard Talmanes compliment a person before, but he just told me that he'd follow you anywhere. And Matt's like, okay, I don't know what to make of this. And Darrad's like, he's given you his heart. I'll be needing you guys to schedule the wedding for late autumn.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Like, okay, great. But again, that scene sort of cuts off with them reporting that Couladin's group is approaching, and Matt being like, well, I'm certainly not going to fight Couladin.
That's what dummies do.
And that's adorable. But he's also like, we're going to provoke them into attacking us so that we can, you know.
Yeah.
Because there aren't really any other options. He says it's a matter of being caught or catching. So
they play a trick.
They play a trick, very classic Macathon. He's like, we'll just also be shouting, protect the Lord Dragon.
And then Couladin will be like, Kill Bill sirens.
It is very funny how Matt utilizes Rand's name throughout this.
Yeah.
Because that initially is his only, what's the word?
Cachet.
Currency.
Yeah.
Is that he's friends with Rand, and they have no other reason to trust him.
Yeah,
you know?
and just luckily one of the people from the Stone of Tyr recognizes him.
Yeah.
So, like...
And then luckily after that, it's a matter of talking to sensible people who, like, understand...
Yeah, warfare.
Tactics when they hear it. But yeah, that is the infamous beginning of the Band of the Red Hand.
Absolutely insane.
Insane. Can't be emphasized enough.
Yeah, and then at the end, all of them are just like, yep, this is our leader.
This is our dad. Boogie, woogie, woogie.
And Matt's like, no, I cannot emphasize
like,
enough.
Ugh.
I do not want to be your dad.
Poor Matt. Meanwhile, we cut back to Rand, who is fully in a fugue state, wandering around on horseback, muttering nonsense. Finally, the maidens are like, okay, we're going back to camp. We have to go find, you know. Rand's like, where's Egg and Avienda? They're like, they're back at camp. Why don't we take you to them? Why don't you go talk to the wise ones? And he's like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Gets back to where Moiraine is healing people, sees the wise ones are now collaborating with the wise ones from the other 4 clans?
Clans, I think.
The other 4 clans that had been approaching throughout the day. So, yippee, now they're unifying under Rand, we assume. But as Medine hilariously is, like, giving water to people.
Moiraine made him into the literal water boy. He's got like jugs on his neck.
I have to imagine that Moiraine has some vague sense of who she
yeah.
is, and that this is just the greatest prank she's ever pulled.
She's
like
just
the
like,
Forsaken who. Carry water, you idiot.
And
he's like,
Asmodee's
fine.
okay. She's really scary, Rand.
She's very scary, Rand. Rand's like, shut up.
It's like, no, she's not. Shh. Don't
And
give
then
her power.
Lan comes up again in one of his few good moments as a mentor and is like, it's been over for fully 2 hours.
Yeah, where the fuck have
No one could find you. That's the only reason you haven't known before that. And Rand's like, oh, cool. Lets go of the power, immediately gets slam dunked by how exhausted and fucking wounded he is and concussed and just collapses.
falls off his horse.
And Lan's like, ugh.
Like, Moiraine, he's bleeding a whole lot.
And we see as Rand's vision fades, Asmodean trying to channel, probably to save Rand's life.
Yeah. Plot twist, what if Asmodee murdered Rand in
Just
this
right
moment?
in this book. It would be so funny. What a hilarious end for Rand. Wandering around about... I mean, because he legitimately looks insane here.
Yeah.
To everyone around him. He even starts mumbling about his past lives very directly. His past life very directly to Asmodean. Talking about Samael. He's like, I remember when he became the betrayer of hope, or whatever. And Asmodean's like, ugh.
Like,
ugh. This is very frightening. It's like, got the same energy as when Matt was like, lose Thorin earlier in the series.
Yeah.
Earlier in the book, I mean. And Randy was
that
like,
moment was
"See,
chilling.
senor?"
And Matt was like, shit.
I was like, ugh.
It's not what I was hoping for. Si, senor? What if
Si, senor?
Lutheran only talked in Spanish?
That would be great, and I think the TV show should. So Rand's just speaking in Spanish sometimes. But yeah, this is a very obvious step downward in Rand's at least projecting sanity.
Yeah.
You'd think it would have a few more repercussions, that people would find it a little harder to trust him after this, but we don't really see that happening too much.
Yeah. I guess they can kind of, like, blame this one on, like, battle fatigue, because he's been, like, running around on his dumb horse all day. I don't know. I mean, it is very frightening when he's like, blah, 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 Ileana. Blah, blah, blah.
And Asmodean's like, oh my god, shut up.
It's like, I hate that dumb whore.
I hate that dumb bitch.
It's like, if I have to hear Ileana's name one more time.
Plot twist, Asmodean was like, oh my god, I've been to dinner with you and Ileana as the third wheel. It's very obnoxious.
It's not pleasant.
You guys are the worst.
Fucking heterosexuals.
Ugh. So anyway, that is the battle for Kyrian, I guess.
Yep. Matt gets some boys. Rand gets a concussion.
Yep.
And also Fantasy France.
Fantasy France is within his grasp now, because Couladin's dead, and the Shadow will have scattered. But that's that. We'll cover kind of aftermath next time, including Matt hilariously now acquiring an entire army.
They, like, literally can't take the army away from him.
And Matt's like, I don't want it.
It's very funny.
And Rand, recovering and actually going into Fantasy France. Being like,
Fanta-France.
oh no, this is mine now.
Francis-y.
Okay.
I'm trying to make it work.
So that's that. Any other things to add?
I don't think so.
Alrighty. Thank you to Glenna Mackenzie for our theme song. Thank you all for listening, supporting us, giving us money on Patreon, and everything you do.
I bit my lip. Sorry.
What?
I bit my lip. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hurts.
Do you need me to keep talking while you prepare a sign-off?
Yeah, what else do you have to tell the people,
I don't
Emily?
have anything. I would have to start making things up.
You can, as always, join us on Fridays at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for our weekly video game live stream.
Okay, do you have a sign-off?
Yes. As I was walking into the apartment today, my phone connects, to the Bluetooth in my car, and I was, like, listening to music, and I guess I didn't realize that the next song queued up was Mr. Brightside by The Killers, and, like, sometimes when I get out of the car, my, like, music app won't always, like, close on my phone. It'll just be, like, open, and I, like, went to put it in my pocket, and Mr. Brightside started playing really loudly, And this guy, like, whipped around.
Jealousy.
Yeah, and I was like, sorry.
Oopsie.
It was very funny. And then, of course, I was just, like, cackling. Because why am I even listening to Mr. Brightside? It's the best song ever.
Yeah, we all know.
Jealousy, turning, don't sue us, Brendan Flowers.
Oh my god.
Is that his name?
I don't think so. Brendan Flower. We're gonna have to look that up. Don't be slutty. Wait, do be slutty.
Don't be slutty.
Don't be slutty. Do be slutty. Sex positive.
Yeah.
And don't do war crimes.
There we
War
go.
crimes negative.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Bye.